good afternoon. And welcome to NATE. It's really it's so good to see so many people here today. So welcome to the 7th National ASAUDIT Technology Event. And I just want to make sure from Val, I think this is the biggest one ever. I think we have over 220 people together here today. I will thank the people later on. Now this event has grown from a single track event with 70 participants to a multi-track event attended by over 220 people, that is now today, and complemented by SIG meetings, training courses, and other events over the past, I think it started yesterday morning and it was ongoing this morning. There were training courses, there were SIGs, and well attended as well. 24 universities are represented here today, 24 out of 26. That's how I counted. And all the way from Venda, I don't know where's north, is it there? From Venda to Cape Town to Salt Lake to Nelspruit. So it's all over South Africa. 24 universities represented here today. It's fantastic. As this is an ASAUDIT event, I want you to understand where it fits into our value proposition. So this is the value proposition of, I just want to see where I have to look, of ASAUDIT. So the four categories, ASAUDIT promotes collaboration, ASAUDIT seeks opportunities, ASAUDIT builds relationships, and brings down costs. Now where does this event fit into our value proposition? And if you look at the red, that is where an event like this fits in. It provides opportunities to engage and network with peers. That is actually one of the most important things that you will do over the next few days. It encourages participation and sharing of ideas and insights. It seeks potential collaboration activities. It provides affordable skills development opportunities exclusive to the sector, like we've seen this morning. It provides a network of ITC practitioners at all levels. It holds informative events exclusive to the sector. Of course, that's what we do today. And it brings together the collective sector knowledge. So this is just one or two, I've mentioned most of this. So this is the 7th NATE. It's been hosted by a few universities. It started out at CPUT. That is in Cape Town. It was in the middle of South Africa, UFS. Northwest hosted it once, UKZN, UCT, and last year was at MUT. I don't know how many of you were there. It was quite a challenging event. And now at NMU. When did your name change? This year? Last year? 2017. But in any case, what you... Now change is imminent everywhere. Your name changed, our color changed. So that's why I have a tie on today. So it looks like the Skills Development Committee is responsible for NATE. And it is they that who set out the streams and finalize the agenda for NATE. Sorry, this was the wrong one. So I think in the next 2.5 days, there's actually 2 days, there is something for everyone. Starting from strategy and leadership, right down to technical stuff like artificial intelligence, intelligent devices. So there will be something for everyone here during the next 2 days. We divide it into, I think, 4 or 3 streams. It's next door. This venue and next door that side. So, to make this a success, I ask you to please collaborate, mingle, challenge each other, learn, and above all, enjoy. A quick word of thanks to the organizing committee. And I'm not sure, Val, I'm going to leave out names if I try to name everyone, but the organizing committee, I presume, is a number of people. And last and not least, for NMU for hosting this beautiful event on this beautiful campus in the windy and friendly city of Port Elizabeth. Thank you very much. Val has one or two announcements to make. I think there were some program changes and other stuff.
Hi, good morning to everybody. Welcome from my side as well, and welcome also to our online people that are watching us, our live stream. I don't know how many people are online at the moment, but you're very welcome too. This plenary session room is live streamed throughout the event, and the YouTube channel is made available afterwards, and many people actually refer back to sessions, so just remember that. We will be uploading all the presentations onto our website, so we're trying to do it during the event, but shortly after the event, so you can refer back to all the presentations then as well. Just a note about security. We've got extra security on campus. So there's people in all the rooms when we break for teas and coffees, but just be careful of your valuables. We do our best to make sure that everything's safe, but it's, you know what it's like, so just be careful of that. Then in a case of emergency, I was told to do the aeroplane thing. In the case of an emergency, there are 4 exits to the building. So one on that side, and 2 at the back. So that really was So, and if there is an emergency, please just all gather in the car park. I'm hoping that I had to say that for nothing, but I just had to say that anyway. If you need anything, if you're unsure about anything, you all know Charlene and myself, but the NMU support staff have all got yellow name tags, so you can approach any of them for assistance on anything that you need. Most importantly, the toilets are behind this building, so if you go in any one of these passages, you'll see there's signs, so if you need the loo, that's where you go. And then I just want to ask that the speakers, thank you very much for all your presentations. We couldn't do it without you, but just if you could please stick to your timing, because this is a multiple stream event and it's very important that we start on time and end on time, particularly for our online guests. They need to know when they need, they might want to be watching a particular presentation. We also ask any questions in this particular venue and in the other venues. If you could just please wait for the roaming mic. There are runners with roaming mics. So when we've got questions, please just wait until the mic's in your hands. And that's about it, except for the power banks. We don't have power all over, but these desks in the front have got power underneath them. And in all the venues, we've got tables like that where you can charge your laptops or phones. And that's it from me. Enjoy the conference. Thank you.
Thank you, Val. The keynote actually changed twice since last week. First, if you still have the program last week, Saki Jansen van Rensburg was actually supposed to talk today, but he went in for an emergency operation. That's what he said. And then on this program, it says Creswell will talk to us, and he said no, he's not going to talk. So welcome to Professor Johan van Niekerk. He's from the School of ICT at NMU, and he's going to talk to us about cybersecurity and the individual, and maybe mention a little bit about Liberty Life as well. Thanks. Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, it's not that one. Okay, thank you. So it's always intimidating talking to a technical kind of audience. I'm used to talking in front of students who don't listen, so I can say almost anything and get away. So if you are listening and there's something, you know, that's really pressing, you're welcome to interrupt me. I've been married for 16 years. I'm used to it. So today's talk, I entitled it Alice in Cyberland, kind of, you know, stealing a bit from Alice in Wonderland there, because just like Alice going down the rabbit hole, none of us really expected cyberspace to be the way it is today. You know, none of us saw this coming. We went down into this weird and wonderful thing called the World Wide Web, and it changed our lives forever. The web was birthed in 1990 when Sir Tim Berners-Lee was stuck at CERN alone just before Christmas. Had nothing to do. Many IT people relate to that. And he came up with this thing called the Hypertext Transfer Protocol, and really the technology that makes the web work. In 1991, he then created the first web server with the aid of Robert Caillou. And in 1993, they convinced the people, their superiors at CERN, that if they want this thing to grow, they need to make it free, because people will use free things, which happened to be correct. And then shortly afterwards, they also realized if you make it free, people will want to change it, and then we have a whole bunch of incompatibility issues. So they created the World Wide Web Consortium in order to make sure that the web stays usable. So that's Tim Berners-Lee with the first version of hypertext running there. Robert Caillou with the world's very first web server. And at that stage, it was really important to not turn off the internet, because that was the web. The internet, of course, being around for much longer than that, but you could literally turn off the web. And we all followed them down this rabbit hole. And the web grew really, really fast, faster than anything that humans have ever experienced before. Within the first 10 years, we hit 500 million users. Another 5 years later, we hit 1 billion. And since then, the growth has been absolutely exponential. The web became really, really big. And today, it's a crowded place. Today, everyone seems to be online. Globally, and I apologize, the 2018 stats is available, but I was too lazy to update my slides. Globally, 3.7 billion people is online. I think the 2018 one is actually 4.1, which is close. It's an enormous amount of growth. It's half the world's population are online in some or other form. Active mobile users is 3.4 billion. And mobile internet penetration is fairly high. There's a 46% of the world's population are online and mobile. It also continuously grows. And of interest is if you look at active social media users, there's been a 21% growth in the period from 2016 to 2017, and close to that again this year. Internet penetration, of course, is always interesting. If you look there at Northern Europe, okay, it's not on the map, but Northern Europe's got 94% internet penetration, and then Europe is doing quite well. South Africa, or Africa, is 29%, and South Africa is about 51%, which is just touching on the global average, 52%. South Africa, we have 55 million people, and of them, just more than half are online. 15 million of them use social networking on a regular basis. We have 79.9 million mobile accounts. So there's more internet accounts than there are users, which is pretty expected. You know, if you think about it, people have an account on their phone, an account at home, and maybe a secondary phone. We have 13 million active mobile internet users. So the question becomes, what do we do online? And, well, we spend in South Africa an average of 8 hours and 2 minutes every day online. Basically, people clock into work and then they go online, and that's what they do. We also spend about 3 hours a day on our mobile phones, browsing the web in some or other way. So we are very, very active online. We all get our social media fix. South Africans spend about 2 hours and 54 minutes a day using social media of some or other form, which is a lot of time, especially if you take it that we have 15 million social media users. That adds up to almost 45 million hours every single day that could have been used to read to a child or do something that's actually useful, as opposed to posting photos of cats and things like that. When we're not on social media, we do like our Netflix. So, well, not just Netflix, but streaming media. We spend about 2 hours and 17 minutes every day watching some form of streaming media. In fact, the World Wide Web is a very, very busy place. If you look globally, in every single minute of the day, quite a lot happens. So, YouTube, people watch 4.1 something million videos every single minute. That's just what's being watched. What's being uploaded is absolutely scary. I looked at it. If you look at what's being uploaded globally in a single hour, it would take me more than 28 years of dedicated watching to just watch 1 hour's worth of YouTube uploads. It's really, really scary. Amazon makes $258,000 US every single minute. That explains why Jeff Bezos is so wealthy. I saw the last estimate was like $130 billion or something. And if you take that and you take the average human has 89 billion brain cells, he literally has more money than sense. The Weather Channel receives more than 80 million requests, a lot of them through things like AccuWeather, every single minute. And AccuWeather, every single time you request any form of thing, they sell your location information to third parties. It's there in the small print. It's their business model. They're not even shy about it. That's just what they do. People stream close to 70,000 hours of Netflix every single minute. There's 45, almost 46,000 Uber rides every single minute. There's 3.6 million Google searches every single minute. There's more than 100 million spam emails sent every single minute. Spam accounts for almost half of the total emails sent in the world, so it's really, really scary. So this involves a lot of money. Globally, e-commerce is worth close to $2 trillion US in a year. And the average person who engages in e-commerce spends about $1,000 to $200 US every year online. In South Africa, 31% of users do shop online. We spend considerably less. It's still $2.3 billion in 2016 to 2017, while the average person spends about $136 US online every year over year. So that's understandable because the South African currency is not that strong, and South Africa has, in general, a fairly poor population. Cybercrime, however, really pays. Even in South Africa, it's only things like asset misappropriation, procurement fraud, and bribery and corruption that is rated as bigger financial crimes in South Africa. In South Africa, cybercrime in 2016 was the 4th largest form of economic crime in this country. If you want to make more money out of any other form of crime, you have to go into government. Because when you look at it, and I'm not saying the government's doing it, but I say you need those kind of contacts. So cybercrime is interesting, and the cyber threat landscape keeps on changing. And in 2016, there were quite a lot of very interesting movements globally. The first thing that happened that was really interesting is that attacks started to become more targeted, and we started to see a lot of what's called hacktivism, where people would attack others or attack institutions, etc., because they have some form of agenda. Whether this agenda is political in nature or something else, they would attack people for non-monetary reasons. For example, in the US elections, the Democratic Party emails were stolen and leaked. There were a lot of disk wiping malware used in the Ukraine, which led to power outages. A lot of disk wiping malware, the same type of thing used in Saudi Arabia. A lot of people, of course, said the Russians are behind it. And there's a lot of political motivation for this. We saw a lot of financial heists, and what's interesting, until quite recently, financial cybercrime tended to target the home users rather than the bank. They would steal the money out of your bank account. They wouldn't target the bank themselves. 2016 saw some very big targeted attacks focused on the actual banks. Many US banks were attacked. A group called Carbonac hit several banks. $81 million was stolen from the Bangladesh Central Bank by a group who called themselves Ban Swift, and they used the Swift credentials that's used for interbank transfers to compromise that specific transaction. There were similar attacks by a group called themselves Odd Enough, and there were a lot of spear phishing. And all of you should know what spear phishing is. It's basically phishing, but we just customize that attack so that it maybe includes a little bit about people you regularly deal with, maybe a name of a real contact, some documents that looks very much like the things you would normally work with, and it makes you more likely to open it. So it's a targeted phishing attack, a phishing attack that's tailor-made for an individual. Over the last 3 years, more than $3 billion was stolen just out of spear phishing attacks. Hackers stopped being the really, really clever techies they always used to be. They just live off the land. They use less custom malware. They compromise their victims through operating system vulnerabilities. Quite often, they only create the exploit after vulnerability is already published and people can patch. They use off-the-shelf tools, Metasploit and things like that. They use cloud services as an attack vector. Simple spear phishing, once again, was used to compromise Hillary Clinton's campaign manager's email account. Lots of macros in MS Office is used, and I see there's a new one out there where you don't even need to click on it. It will work in MS Office even if you don't have macros enabled, which is a little bit scary. We saw a massive resurgence in email as an attack channel. Worldwide, in 2016, 1 out of every 131 emails was malicious. So if you take, there's about 200 billion emails, and you work it out, that's a lot of malicious emails being sent. Lots of this is driven by botnets for hire, spam botnets for hire. You can purchase the services of a botnet fairly cheaply. A lot of these are based in countries like Belarus, etc., which don't subscribe to GDPR, so even if you opted out now, it doesn't help. Email targets the weakest link. Email targets the human. So even if your security is just about perfect and I can just get you to click on a simple attachment, I've already circumvented 90% of it. Ransomware, there was a massive upsurge in ransomware, which, by the way, now declined, which is both good and bad news. Ransomware is driven by the ease with which we can send malicious email, the fact that strong encryption has become kind of ubiquitous, and the fact that cryptocurrency allows people to have an untraceable way of extorting money from their victims. The decline in ransomware, now quite recently, is driven by the fact that people don't really pay, so the hackers now rather infect you with Bitcoin mining malware. So either way, cryptocurrency is very much driving a lot of that. Internet of Things and cloud became very, very big as a driver. The Mirai botnet, for example, was a very, very good example of a botnet being used for malicious attacks. Attacks target cloud services. Of course, you know, cloud servers very much depend on bandwidth. And if I have a nice big distributed of denial of service attack, I can really affect your business if everything's in the cloud. It gives massive DDoS capabilities. In 2016, the biggest attack at that stage worldwide was launched against Brian Krebs, who's a cybersecurity specialist, specifically investigating Russian mafia links to things like spam and kiddie porn, etc. 665 gigabits per second attack. And everyone went, wow, this is big. Not too long ago, earlier this year, GitHub was hit with a 1.35 terabyte attack. And what was really interesting was, first of all, within 10 minutes they were back up and running because they had everything in place they needed. I hope they stay as robust now that Microsoft has bought them. Also interesting was the reason they were able to launch such a big attack against GitHub was they were exploiting a vulnerability in UDP where people did not patch their memcache service. So you could send a spoofed UDP message to a memcache server, and with a tiny little couple of kilobyte message, you could get a response of several hundred megabytes going to the wrong person. And that was what's used to generate this absolute massive attack. So they could amplify the attack really, really cheaply and easily. And there's still more than 90,000, estimated more than 90,000 unsecured memcache servers out there. So we're going to see a lot of these really, really big attacks in the future. Internet of Things, of course, lots of devices were shown to be vulnerable. Barbie dolls, I don't know why you would want an internet-enabled Barbie doll, but people spy on children through things like that. Jeep Cherokee was shown to be very vulnerable. You know, I think they've patched it since, but you could literally shut it down in traffic. You just needed to be close enough. The Hospira Life Care Pump, which administers medication to people in intensive care, you could hack it from almost anywhere in the world and simply up the dosage to whatever you want it to be. A lot of pacemakers were withdrawn from the market because they were shown to be vulnerable to hacking. You could literally stop someone's heart because they have a pacemaker and you know how. Insulin pumps, diabetics have for many years been hacking their own insulin pumps because that way you can customize your insulin regime to your own needs. Warships, the question was raised whether this USS John McCain that ran into a Chinese trawler, whether that wasn't maybe interfered with a bit. I can't tell you it was or it wasn't. I have no idea. What I do know is the US Naval Academy has become so worried about attacks against the IT infrastructure on their ships that they reinstated classes in celestial navigation. Because maybe we need to steer by the stars during the next war. If you plug in an Internet of Things device, and there are stupid things that's Internet of Things capable nowadays. I mean, fridges, irons, washing machines, everything. It's estimated 2 minutes after plugging any new device in before it's being attacked for the first time. And most of them are vulnerable. Most of them, well, some of them come with pre-installed botnet software, so it's not even that they're vulnerable. You buy a compromised device right off the shelf. There's been a lot of data breaches, and if you look at the trends, you can see almost every year the trends of breaches where more than 10 million people or 10 million identities were exposed have been increasing year on year on year. I mean, latest, everyone knows about Liberty now, or well, Facebook, who estimated that all of their 2 billion users, roughly, data has been scraped at some or other time. And the fact that you secure your own things doesn't necessarily mean it won't be compromised anyways, because only 33 South African Facebook users filled out that Cambridge Analytica questionnaire. And out of those 33, 60,000 related accounts that they could just follow were compromised. So it's very, very scary. Email threats and malware, there's been a very big increase in the ratio of emails sent that actually is malicious. It went from 244 in 2014 to 131 in 2016. Lots and lots of bots, lots of new malware variants. It is becoming the attack channel of choice. Mobile phones, of course, are not safe. If you look at it, I always like to point out the iOS vulnerabilities simply because I know so many people saying, oh, I have an Apple, it's safe. If you have an Apple laptop, per definition, that thing has got a massive flaw in bash, which means anyone in this room with just the right amount of knowledge can just log in without anything. But Apple iOS devices themselves are not safe at all. You do need to run antivirus and anti-malware on every single thing you own. The websites are still vulnerable. 76% roughly, and it stays almost the same, of all websites have vulnerabilities. The only good thing out there or about this is that the number of critical vulnerabilities in most websites have reduced from about 20% in 2014 to 9%. And what's scary is the fact that there's 76% of websites is vulnerable tells you there's 24% that's not vulnerable. It is possible to do a website that has no known vulnerabilities, but the average web developer has absolutely no clue what to do. You know, we have this wonderful open web application security project, and all you need to go is go to OWASP, look at the best practices, apply them, and your website will be mostly safe. And most people really don't bother. So it's worrying because it's going to stay a problem. Ransomware, of course, massive growth in ransomware, and now recently a decrease in that. Where do people get all this technology to compromise you with? Well, they buy it. I don't need to be a coding genius to write an exploit. I just buy it. I want a ransomware toolkit. Anything from $10 for a really crap one to $1,800 for a really good one, depending on the underlying technology. I can purchase a short duration denial of service for anything from $5 to $20. I can purchase probably enough to shut down most businesses in this city for about $200 to $1,000. You can shut down almost anyone if you really want to, if they are not ready. GitHub being a nice example of people who knew exactly what to do, immediately passed their control over to a scrubbing server, and they had got rid of all those unnecessary traffic. Documents, passport, utility bills, etc. These things sell online. You think you're throwing your Telkom account into the rubbish bin. If someone digs it out, scans it, it's got a value online, because if I want to steal your identity, I need to know a little bit about you. Credit cards, anything from 50 cents to $30, depending on how fresh it is and the kind of card, of course. My card will probably be free. This was shaped by, so that was 2016, the things that really happened. But the history of cybercrime comes quite a long distance. It started with computer worms. First known worm was the Morris worm, where this guy basically wanted to measure how big the internet is, and he wrote a worm to crawl around, and due to a little mistake on his part, he actually made this worm replicate even if a machine is already infected. And he brought just about the whole, 10% of the internet was infected, and he brought almost everything down to its knees. It's quite interesting. He's still lecturing at MIT. And I know Professor Matt Bishop, who I know quite well from UC Davis, was on the team who originally caught him, and his own son now works in security, so it's just very interesting. The Configure virus was a worm that back in 2008, I mean that's like 10 years ago, infected 9 million computers and stole username, passwords, and banking details. And it was well known for also infecting the UK Parliament. When you think about 9 million, it was a seminal event, and you think about how many attacks that's bigger than that we have today. Just 1 decade later, it is really, really scary. 2010, Stuxnet, and I'll get back to Stuxnet because that was really interesting. Cyber warfare started where the first time people started to really call it cyber warfare was in Estonia, 2007, when the entire country was crippled for 2 weeks, basically because that statue you see over there, which is a statue of a Russian World War II veteran, was moved. And the Russian citizens in Estonia disagreed with it. So it's also a form of hacktivism, and they simply brought the country to its knees. Stuxnet in 2010 was used to destroy a fifth of Iran's total number of nuclear centrifuges. It literally caused the hardware to spin faster and faster and faster until it self-destructed to reduce their capability of producing enriched uranium. South Korea in 2013, many attacks were launched against the public broadcaster. The theory was that these attacks originated from North Korea. They couldn't prove it, but what they have found out that North Korea is one of the biggest cyber warfare units in the world, and they've actually been going for longer than anyone else. They're really prepared for cyber warfare. Well, they're really prepared for warfare. NotPetya, in 2017, that caused all those power outages. It's also a fairly interesting one. A lot of these things came from undetected vulnerabilities. In 2009, Google China was hacked due to an Internet Explorer vulnerability that allowed them to hack Gmail accounts. 2014, Heartbleed was discovered. Most of you will remember because everyone ran around patching the hardware vulnerability. It was a vulnerability in the transport layer security of OpenSSL, and it was discovered 2 years after introduction. So for 2 years, all of us have been using OpenSSL to do our banking, our online banking and whatever, because it's secure. It's the same as the Equifax breach, where the vulnerability was published 2 months before the actual Equifax hack happened using that vulnerability. So they had a full 2 months to just run a patch, and it would have been fine. User details being stolen, there's been an upwards trend. It started with Configure in 2008. Sony PlayStation was very notable in 2011. There, it was still kind of a proper hack. They used a DDoS, a massive DDoS, to first soften the target a bit before they compromised it. 2011, Epsilon. Epsilon, as hundreds of millions of accounts were compromised there. Epsilon does a lot of online marketing for legal, I want to say legal online marketing. It's the biggest online marketing broker in the world. A lot of your big other corporations will pay them to do the marketing for them. So if you subscribe to some newsletter from a big bank or whoever, there's a very big chance that Epsilon is actually driving that marketing. They were spearfished, and through that, compromised. 2013, Target, US supermarket group, a third of all US adults were compromised and had their credentials and credit card credentials stolen from third parties via that hack. 2014, eBay, employee credentials. And you all know about Liberty just now, and we've been receiving more and more and more and more and more and more. And this is becoming very much the trend. They steal user details. What do they do with it? They build profiles. They connect it. Machine learning has reached a point where anyone with access to enough data can build massive profiles to either target you for stealing your money, or target you to just infect you with bots, or target you with propaganda or whatever to try and manipulate you into voting or deciding or thinking in a certain way. Hacktivism has been on the upwards. 2013, a very interesting early case of hacktivism was the so-called Spam House DDoS attack, where Cyberbunker is a Dutch internet service provider, and they shut down Spam House, which was a group of people who were using them, paid to use them, their services. Cyberbunker shut down the Spam House operations, and Spam House took exception to this and attacked them with what at that stage was one of the largest DDoS attacks. It's notable because the entire world's internet or web browsing was slowed down for a period of almost 2 weeks, just due to the amount of traffic that flowed at that point. 2015, the US Central Command's Twitter and YouTube accounts were defaced literally minutes after then President Barack Obama made a talk about cybersecurity, and they were defaced with some nice ISIS propaganda. Of course, now they've got Donald Trump, so they don't need to do anything to the Twitter account. It's embarrassing in its own right. Ashley Madison was a massive case of hacktivism. The hackers came and said, we've compromised you. We will publish all your data if you don't stop operating and having this, we'll connect people for affairs, for money kind of business, because they disagreed with it. And they went through on their threats and actually delivered. And I know many people who have that full database. It's not just names. It was credit card information. It was the full emails that was sent. And it was also the people who paid to have everything deleted. So it's fairly scary. One of my personal favorites is the whole eternal blue thing, where in 2017, a hacker group calling themselves the Shadow Brokers stole cyber warfare exploits that was developed by the NSA. So the NSA got hacked, and the stuff they used for cyber warfare was stolen from them. I mean, that is really scary. WannaCry, you may remember the ransomware that followed. WannaCry was based on Eternal Blue, and it was used for massive amounts of ransomware attacks. In June 2017, NotPetya was also based on Eternal Blue, which was developed for that. The other ones that was stolen in the same batch, Danderspritz, Oddjob, Fuzzbunch, etc., has not really been used yet. So they still have them out there, and I mean, these things were published online on several forums, if you know where to go to. So we can still expect to see some real cyber warfare attacks coming with those underlying attack vectors. So it's out there. It's scary. So a couple of reflections on the major trends. The first thing that is very noticeable is it has become targeted. Hackers now gather information. They do their research, they construct a spear phishing message, and then they target a single victim, often with a specific agenda. What's really, really scary is when you throw in the use of machine learning or AI with big data. Because with big data, I can actually automate spear phishing. If I have enough data, and the data is really out there to purchase now, and I have even a basic knowledge of machine learning, I can use that to construct automated spear phishing attacks, which will be way better than getting some email from a Nigerian crown prince who wants you to smuggle money out of the country. So it is there. And then you get the so-called random attacks is still there, where people still identify an exploit and they just distribute a general phishing attack, and they aim to have as many small victims as possible, little bits of money from everyone. Kind of the WannaCry model or the cryptocurrency mining model that's still out there. So how do you stay safe? You're all in IT, so you should know, but I'm going to tell you my favorites for telling the average home user, because everyone needs to hear it, and you need to at the very least know the very basics. And the first one is just protect your own device. Patch. Yes, it's a lot of bandwidth. Yes, they don't need to download to push out 2 gigs for every single patch, but yeah, patch. Install anti-malware, have a firewall. Install a firewall, change the default logins. I mean, this is really obvious stuff. Everyone should know it. Secondly, have a good password. The average user has 27 discrete online logins. 37% of people forget one at least once a week. The problem is, most of you have password policies that's based on a complete and utter load of crap. Bill Burr, who wrote the original US standard for NIST, has admitted that he had no background, no knowledge, no access to empirical data. He thumb-sucked it and he got it wrong. What he came up with the original standard, and there is a new standard if you go out and look, and the new standard says pretty much what I'm telling you now, is these kind of passwords that look like this, that you take some word and you add a whole bunch of fancy characters and you make it 8 characters or 12 characters or whatever, and they say, okay, this is good. The problem with that is, if you look at that password, it's only got 28 bits of entropy. So even if you have a fairly slow attack, 1,000 guesses per second, it will take you 3 days to brute force that password. Straight up. And it's difficult for a human to remember. So it's easy for a machine to crack, difficult for a human to remember, exactly what we don't want. If you take any 4 random words of sufficient length, like this correct horse, this is from XKCD, so it's widely published, so don't use those 4. Or you can, but put them in different orders, but I'm sure there's at least one brute force attack out there that does that. That gives you 44 bits of entropy, and the same attack would take more than 500 years to crack it. So allow people long passwords, allow things like spaces. Don't insist on special characters. It's been proven to just be a waste of time. That still doesn't solve the problem that I have 27 unique online logins. And that's the average user. Most of us have substantially more. And if I have to remember 27 times 4 random words, that's just not going to work. So what do? Well, write it down. Don't write it on a sticky note and put it on the keyboard. Write it down in something you carry on you, maybe that will help. Not on your mobile phone, because most people just use some form of a little swipe to unlock feature, so that's too easy. But write it down. If you don't write it down, my personal preference is get yourself a password manager. Yes, LastPass have been compromised, but in the kind of lightning don't strike twice type of logic, this makes them safer now. Because they've been compromised once and they really got a big fright because this is their entire business. So they've tried to do it. Don't use free Wi-Fi. I know. We're in South Africa or in Africa. It's free. Are you kidding? Don't use free Wi-Fi if you can. Do nothing sensitive. If you're on free Wi-Fi, just use a VPN. It's got the added bonus that you can watch Netflix from all countries if you use the right one. Just pay for it. Turn off this connect to nearby devices if you don't actually need to do it. Turn off the Wi-Fi if you don't need to use it. Because if you've connected to Mug and Bean Wi-Fi, and my Wi-Fi hotspot is called Mug and Bean Wi-Fi, it's going to try and connect to me automatically, and then I'm already in there. Finally, destroy your documents. You know, identity theft is a real thing. Don't overshare. Keep track of your account. Subscribe to Have I Been Owned. It will let you know if one of your accounts has been compromised. And then change those passwords. You know, don't put, this is one of my absolute favorites. Wait, where is it? There. Don't scan in your flight tickets, take a photo and post it on Facebook to show everyone you're going to Estonia. If you do, at least cover up the barcode. Because, well, barcode, normally it's a QR. Because with that QR, it normally contains everything I would have stolen anyways. Your name, your passport number. So please be careful of that. Don't trust every app. Because they don't need to know everything. I'm going to conclude by saying the problem in cybersecurity is still not so much a technology problem. The problem exists between the keyboard and the chair. Sometimes it's the techie person not doing their part, and sometimes it's the home user not knowing what to do. If we can address that, we can fix the problem to a large extent. Thank you.